What's up, guys? This is Jay here with FantasyLabs, bringing you the MLB Daily Flex podcast, where we go through kind of different topics to help you guys get a unique perspective on any given slate. And Brian is actually off for tonight's slate, which means the structure of this pod is in serious trouble because I am joined here with Pete, aka CSU Ram 88, to discuss this Friday 14-game late slate for April 15th. Pete, how's it going, man?
Doing great, Jay. Pumped for this. It would normally be tax day, but tax day has been pushed back to Monday the 18th. So
That is glorious.
for all you procrastinators, you can still play DFS and worry about your taxes over the weekend. But
Yeah. What way to spend a better weekend, really.
No, there's nothing better than
Speaking
taxes.
of this weekend, man, we've had it's been mid-70s all week, and we're getting – have you seen the forecast?
I'm pumped, dude. I'm jealous of my friends playing golf, and anything that'll keep them off the course makes me stay somewhat competitive.
Sabotage. I'm seeing anywhere from 2 to 4 feet of snow. It's unreal.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's unreal. And then it's going to be 70s next week, so I'm not really sweating it too much. We'll just have some, nice little blizzard.
There's no course games.
I know, man. Yeah. We need to definitely hit up a Rockies game soon.
Oh, yeah. We'll get out there for sure.
Absolutely. Definitely. All right. Well, yeah, let's jump into the slate. We'll start. We're kind of doing the same format as we have been with the pods with me and Brian. So we'll start things off with talking a little bit about Vegas lines and movement and how it kind of applies to any given slate. So we'll start off kind of touching up on, what stands out on this exact slate. We have a 14-game slate. So finally, we have a big slate with not a lot of day games. So we don't have these split slates anymore right now. Kind of how we're treating this slate in terms of implied totals and spreads. On this slate, we have the Astros at the top. We have the Red Sox, the Rangers, the Marlins are up there. At the bottom, we have the Giants against Kershaw, the Rays against Chris Sale, the Padres, the Reds. So, Pete, how are you kind of going about this slate in terms of utilizing Vegas lines, whether it's kind of cash or tournaments?
Well, as we're recording this here on Friday morning, the Cubs team total just came out, which is intriguing at 4.9 runs implied.
Yeah, I think second highest.
So pretty high, which is interesting. Definitely targeting them on the 220 slate, the all-day slate, but obviously they're not in the main slate. So there's some teams. I think you look at the good hitting environments like Boston. I think both teams make sense there. The Marlins team total really stands out. That's something I'm always looking for is there a team that has a very high team total relative to what their normal team totals are, especially if they're in a similar park. Like the Marlins at home are not going to have this high of an implied team total most days. So I'm paying attention to that. And then obviously, you look at Madison Bumgarner and Kershaw facing off against each other, implied total for the Giants, 2.5 runs. So you can kind of identify that. Pitchers Park with two elite pitchers, probably a great game to target pitching from.
Yeah, definitely. And I think looking at totals and implied team totals is so crucial in kind of predicting ownerships of stacks. I think a lot of people just look at implied totals. You'll definitely see correlation between highest implied team totals and highest owned team stacks. So I think that's always something to look at given the variance of baseball on a day-to-day basis. This is something we can take advantage of.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move into kind of our next segment here, talking about pitchers on this slate. And we'll kind of go through 2 pitchers each that we think are intriguing, and then we'll list one pitcher that we have as a fade potential on this slate. So let's start things off, Pete. Who are your 2 pitchers that you're looking at on this slate?
Well, the first pitcher is going to be Kershaw or Sale. I think Kershaw's 1A. He's the best pitcher in the world. If you want to be a little bit different with a high-end pitcher, Sale certainly makes sense. He has as much K upside as any pitcher when he takes them out. So those are 1A and 1B for me. And then the other guy that I think is interesting, I'm monitoring how much, how long he's lasting into games, which is not great at this point, but he certainly has the upside, and he definitely has the talent. Carlos Martinez, great Vegas odds for this game, and I think he'll be relatively low owned, considering most people are going to pay up, are going to go up to Kershaw, Sale, maybe even Bumgarner. So I think Carlos Martinez is a nice contrarian play that if Kershaw, those other guys bust, you can be getting nice dividends.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we definitely like the matchup that Carlos has. The only reason I'm ever hesitant on Carlos, I like his peripherals and his talent, and I like him as a tournament player because his upside, strikeouts, and whatnot is really just the innings he doesn't have the same upside in innings as Kershaw and Sale. And some of these guys who can go 8 innings or complete games, whereas Carlos is usually around 5 or 6 innings because he gets kind of in trouble with walks and gets that pitch count up there. But yeah, I definitely like the call.
He's playing the Reds today, though, so hopefully that
Yep.
works out.
Should be a lot of strikeouts. So the pitchers I'm looking at, I think, are intriguing. I'm starting things off. Obviously, I think, in cash, you couldn't really go wrong paying up for Sale or Kershaw. I think the price discount that Greinke gives you is appealing to me on this slate. So I like Greinke a lot. He's one of my top cash plays on this slate at a good amount less than Kershaw and Sale, so you can kind of stack up on your bats a little bit. And then, I think for Kershaw, the Giants are a team that just does not strike out a lot. And then for Sale, the Rays, I've had success against lefties in the past. And that's not to say I don't like Kershaw or Sale. I don't mind spending up for them. I'm going to try to. But I think Greinke's a good pivot in cash if you just need to spend on some of these bats. So, I think both Kershaw and Sale are really nice. But Greinke, targeting the Padres, if they scored 0 runs in their only homestand of the season. They just finished a series against the Phillies where they scored 1 run in 3 games. So I like Greinke going in a pitcher's park finally outside of Arizona. And then the other pitcher I'm looking at who I like as a tournament play is opposing Greinke actually in James Shields. I think kind of a lot of people will use Greinke. I think he'll have a decently high ownership, which means a lot of people will fade his opponent in James Shields. So I think Shields it makes for a tournament play is the highest home runs per 9 on this entire slate, so it's definitely risky. But I like his upside and potential low ownership as kind of an intriguing tournament play. He is the 5th highest strikeouts per 9 on this slate, so I think his strikeout potential and the kind of boomer bust makeup with his high home run rate, and then you add that to his low ownership, I think will be key in large field tournaments. What pitcher on this slate are you kind of looking at? Depressed ownership, kind of a guy you're looking to fade?
Right. So I like the call on Shields. Guy I'm going to fade is Keuchel today. I think there's obviously a lot of the pitchers you can fade that are obviously dogs and easy to identify. But Keuchel looks like a pretty good play today. They're definitely a big favorite. The Astros score a lot of runs. But to me, paying up that price, I'd much rather play for Kershaw or Sale. And I am a little bit concerned with the matchup here. Detroit has been very good this year so far. I saw a stat recently they're the only team to score 4 runs in every game. That might have been broken recently, but Keuchel, a very good lefty who's going to get ground balls. But if he is going to get in trouble, it's going to be giving up home runs. And there's a lot of righties in that lineup, whether it be Upton or Miguel Cabrera or even JD Martinez, that could give him some trouble. So he's a fade for me today.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that call. The fade for me is kind of more to projected ownership, and it's Rich Hill. I think is immensely underpriced on both sites. I think he's 7,400 on FanDuel and 7,300 on DK, and usually he's a guy to look at because he has an incredible strikeout rate. But he is facing the Royals, and the Royals had by far the least amount of strikeouts last season. So the reason to take Hill is obviously for his strikeouts. So I think when you get this matchup together, I think it's a fade for me. I think due to his price, I think he will carry pretty high ownership. And you look at, I think 4 of his last 6 games dating back to last season, he has double-digit strikeouts. So a lot of peripherals are there, but facing the Royals is not something I want to target when utilizing a strikeout pitcher. So he does lead all pitchers on this slate in K per 9. I just think the combination kind of the opponent and the ownership in tournaments makes him a fade for me. Let's jump into the next topic and discuss hitters. And we'll just kind of go through a couple hitters that we think are intriguing, kind of not really dependent on price or site, just in general. 2 guys who you're kind of looking at as top hitters on this slate. So what do you got for us there?
So studs, Big Papi, David Ortiz.
Oh, yeah.
He's in a great spot. There's some other stats we'll talk about later on in the pod, but at home here versus a righty, love the spot. And it's his farewell season. He's just been crushing in Boston. And then on my first MLB pod, I have to mention Trevor Story, even with a low team total, not part of the main slate. It'd be a huge travesty if I didn't mention him in my first pod. So Trevor Story, he is the GOAT. He's the new Tulo, except much better. And he'll be low owned in those early, all-day slates if you want to take a flyer on him. So I love Trevor Story.
Yeah, I definitely like utilizing the Rockies a bit in this all-day slate. I think they'll definitely go very overlooked for those of you D-gens who are playing the all-day slate with we only have 1 day game, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's me, so I'll be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's nothing wrong with degenning it up a little every now and then. So yeah, the 2 hitters I'm looking on this slate, I think we have a lot of options. We have a lot of, it's a huge slate. I mean, there's 14 games. Obviously, there are tons of hitters that we like. You can pick kind of down the list guys who are platoon advantage on teams implied to score a lot. One guy I'm looking at, I think is very intriguing, is D. Gordon. The Braves pitching staff is bottom 3 in the league, at best. It's a horrible staff from top to bottom, bullpen, everything really. So it's a team I'm generally going to stack against, especially kind of this early in the season still. I am expecting Tyler Flowers to catch. They are facing a lefty, and he had a 25% caught stealing percentage last year, which is not good at all. So I think the speed upside of D. Gordon in this one is very appealing to me. The Marlins are expected to score 4.7 runs, which is tied for the second highest. Actually, it's the third highest now that the Cubs are out. But regardless, it's a high implied team total, especially for the Marlins. So I'm looking to get exposure to the Marlins, and what better way to get exposure than target their leadoff hitter who has steal upside. So a 90% bargain rating on FanDuel. I like him in cash and very much so in tournaments. And another hitter I'm looking at, this kind of gears a bit more towards DK because he's underpriced, is Colby Rasmus, just 4,100 on DK. Still definitely like him on FanDuel as well. Probably more tournaments though, and cash I'm fine with on DK. But he gets a great matchup against Mike Pelfrey, who I'm not very high up as a pitcher in general. Hitting cleanup for a team that's implied at the highest run total of the entire night at 5 runs. Rasmus has a 260 ISO against righties. I think we can basically keep playing him in these good, any above average matchup until his price goes up significantly. So those are kind of 2 guys I'm looking at. And real quick, I want to throw in a third in Mark Trumbo. We might get into him a little bit later, but I think he's a great tournament play kind of overall on the slate. There's just so many guys with all these teams playing on this slate. So let's move on to the next topic, which is value hitters. We'll go through 2 hitters we like on each specific site. So, Pete, you can start things off with your 2 value hitters that you have for DraftKings.
So 2 young outfielders. The first guy is going to be Preston Tucker. We'll see where he bats today, and assuming that he's in the order, I like him quite a bit. Didn't produce yesterday, but this is a great spot for him. The Astros have a huge total. He's only 3,500 on DraftKings, and he has the hardest hit percentage on the slate. He's hard hitting at 80% of the time right now. Obviously, it's a small sample, but I think he's an elite player who will have lower ownership relative to someone, say, like Colby Rasmus, who I do agree with you is a great play today. Yep. And then I'm going Hazel Baker, who I know you had a funny
Hazel Baker
thing. He's hotter than Zoolander or whatever. I don't even remember what you said.
Yeah, man, he's still just on fire.
He's too cheap still, so I think he definitely falls into this. And the reason we like him so much is he's got power, he's got speed, he's going to bat towards the top of the lineup, and I think the Cardinals overall are in a very good spot. What do you got, FanDuel, Jay?
Yeah, man, Hazel Baker is the Cardinals just in general are absurd with these guys. They pull out of nowhere. Like this guy's like a 7-year minor. Like he shouldn't even be on a team really. And the Cards just get these guys all the time that turn into studs. It's like, I don't know, great management really for the Cards as usual. But the 2 value hitters I'm looking at, Nomar Mazara. Definitely raking since being called up. He's still only 2,700. It's obviously a limited sample size for him as well, but it's hard to ignore his 5.17 WOBA against righties thus far this season. He looks really polished already for a 20-year-old. I mean, it's incredible how good he's looked. He has raw power. He generally doesn't strike out a lot, which are things that I really like, kind of regardless of his young age. So you kind of bring up a guy this young and see that he doesn't strike out a lot, and it kind of raises his floor a little bit. He gets to face Vance Worley in a hitter's park, just 2,700. I think it makes him an easy cash play on FanDuel, assuming he hits in the 2-hole again, and the Rangers are projected to score 4.7 runs. So I definitely like some Mazara exposure, and I'm high on him for the rest of the season really as well. He looks really good. And then another guy, I'm doubling down on the Rangers here, and I'm looking to go get some Mitch Moreland exposure. Just same price, 2,700. I don't mind loading up exposure on the Rangers on this slate at all. I think these guys are both underpriced. Moreland has the platoon advantage in his favor, posting a 355 WOBA and a 222 ISO against the lefties or righties. Sorry, and then so I'm fine kind of rolling both in cash, trying to save money a bit, maybe spending up on Sale or Kershaw or Greinke and kind of load up on bats elsewhere. So I think these guys save a lot of money for FanDuel on this slate. Let's jump into the next topic. We got stacks, which we kind of touched up on in the Vegas line segment of teams that are implied to score a lot of runs. Is there any kind of one stack that you're keying in on as one of your favorites on this slate?
I like the Orioles quite a bit today. I like the righty bats. Being on the road is a nice advantage for a stack because you're guaranteed the ninth inning at bats. I think the righties have a great spot here, and they could hit a lot of home runs, which is always good for a stack. In addition to that, I think the Blue Jays will be pretty under-owned. Obviously, being on the road in Fenway is a good hitter's park. Their team total is not quite as high as some of these other teams, and we know that they have a ton of potential. Tough thing with the Jays is fitting in all those bats, so maybe you can go with even a more contrarian stack and take some lower order guys and load up on pitching. But I think they're interesting. And then got to mention the Rockies too for you guys out there. If there's any tournament type things that you're playing all day, fire in the Rockies. No over here.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. For these all day too, I think that game will definitely be overlooked in the grand scheme of the Rockies side, at least.
Who's your stack, Jay Sean?
Stack I'm looking at tonight. There are a lot to choose from, but one I'm keying in on is the Angels. Tommy Milone has the second highest home run per nine behind James Shields on this entire slate. That's something I really like targeting in pitchers when looking at who to stack against. I think projected to score a modest 4.1 runs. I think it'll be overlooked. We have a lot of teams 4.6 or up that I think people will key in on for sure, especially over a team at just 4.1. So I like the projected ownership. I think will be very low, kind of outside of probably Mike Trout. I think a lot of these guys will be overlooked. So I'm looking to kind of load up on the righties on this team. Gentry, Trout, obviously, Pujols, Crone, Calhoun. They're kind of all guys I like, mixing and matching in stacks to get exposure to the Angels here against a very home run prone pitcher. Let's keep it moving and go on to the stat of the day, Pete. What do you got for us with the stat of the day?
So I talked about how I like David Ortiz. He's also leading all the hitters in Pro Trends on our FantasyLabs models. He has 12 Pro Trends today. So I love David Ortiz, and the stat of the day is the 12 Pro Trends that he has going into the night.
Yeah, that's huge. And given how many players are on this slate, that says a lot that he's leading them all. So yeah, definitely a good call there. And my stat of the day is I actually picked Carlos Gonzalez, but he is in the all day slate. So again, for you D-Gens, which we know there are a lot of you out there, Carlos Gonzalez has an ISO differential of plus 228 on this slate, just raking the ball this season. He looks healthy, looks really healthy, which was a concern towards the end of last season a bit. I think he's away from Coors Field, so I think it'll drive his ownership down a lot. So for this all-day slate, he kind of makes for one of my favorite tournament plays. I think he'll be very overlooked outside of Coors Field.
All right, I like it.
Let's move on to the bold call of the day now. I'm sure you got a good one for this, so let's hear what you got.
My original one's actually terrible. I have Rocky Stack winning a GPP. There's not many GPPs in the
Yeah.
So I'm going to say something even more bold, which we're going to kind of disagree on here. I'm going to say Arizona Stack with Zach Greinke is, might win a GPP or be a really good team. Obviously, a low team total. Shields has been good, not a great park, but
it's fun. Yeah, man.
So I think Shields could either be great or be very bad.
Yep,
so
that's why I
take Arizona as a good stack tonight as a bowl.
Yeah, no, that's definitely why I have Shields as a tournament play, because I'm terrified of his downside, kind of with his home run, how many he gives up. So yeah, I think definitely the Diamondbacks could put a number on him for sure. Yeah, my bold call of the day, actually, it's pretty bold, but I already went through my favorite stack in the Angels, but a bold call of the day is that a Twins stack or a Twins mini stack, exposure to the Twins basically, will ship a GPP. on this slate. I think they'll have such low ownership at this point that, you're getting value in just the minuscule ownership out of some of these hitters, where, they're not going to score 0-1 runs every game. So I think, they have a lot of good hitters. I think it's a fine. I don't think they're as bad as the numbers show. I like a stack getting some exposure to Brian Dozier, Trevor Plouffe, Miguel Sano, maybe some Joe Mauer. So I like mixing and matching exposure to the Twins a bit for very depressed ownership on this slate, especially. Just kind of looking at the recency bias of how bad the Twins are. And I don't like targeting Garrett Richards, but in the chance that he doesn't have a great game and the Twins put up some runs, you're looking at very high upside with low ownership for all these guys. So that's my bold call. The Twins are going to ship a GPP.
Love it, Jay.
Yeah, and I think we got is this our first huge slate of the season? I feel like
huge, all basically night slate, Friday night. So hopefully everyone has a great day. Get some nice momentum into the weekend by winning a lot of money tonight, and should be.
Yeah, absolutely. We got playoffs for NBA up. It's gonna be, we're getting into the mode where it's just baseball only. Definitely looking forward to the grind. I think it's important to take these day by day, these slates, and kind of start your research early and get a good grasp, especially on these larger slates, which we'll start seeing a lot more. I know the schedule's been pretty brutal to start with a lot of day games. I don't even wake up for half the day. Like, who's watching a baseball game at 10 a.m.? It's absurd.
Okay, that's the American dream,
It's so early. Yeah. They're too early, though. It's like, I don't know. They're losing viewers, and then they're putting these games on so early to start the season. I think a lot of it has to do with I read that I think some games are earlier because like school nights for kids. But how are kids going to go to school if there are all these day games?
Yeah,
I was ditch school to go to day games, but I don't think all the kids do that. But, yeah,
should.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely see the schedule normalize here coming up though, with a lot more full slates and no more 7-day games. Obviously, we have some days of the week that are split up still, but in general, it'll get a lot better. So, good luck on this slate, everybody. Just remember to kind of, I think what are your kind of last remarks? Mine are don't get cute in cash games for pitching. I think this is a good slate to pay up for pitcher. Obviously, in general, I recommend that pretty strongly in cash games to pretty much always pay up for pitcher.
I agree. I'm a guy who's going to play the chalk, and I think Kershaw's the chalk in general, especially over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you have to play two guys, so it is a little tougher, but certainly a lot of good pitching tonight, and strikeouts are at a premium. One other final thought that I think is important today is that there's a lot more really nice tournaments, especially over on DraftKings. A $33 tournament looks really nice, and this is a great night to go contrarian in some regard. Whatever you think is a good contrarian or leverage play. Obviously, it's good to do that in general in baseball and tournaments, but because there's so many options and so many different things tonight, I think you can find some really high upside and even some teams that aren't, low team totals that are still going to be somewhat contrarian. So a lot of opportunities, definitely a great tournament night with all the good pitching and good spots for hitters.
I definitely agree. I'm sure you're going to be firing a little bit in that 333 tourney.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, definitely going to throw some in there. But all right, we'll close things up. Good luck, everybody, on this slate. We'll get back with you with a podcast, I believe, Sunday night for Monday's full slate. So until then, good luck this weekend, guys.